This is a fascinating and dark story. I will write a completed version of the narrative in English, maintaining the core plot, mystery, and intrigue, but updating the names and locations to an American setting and expanding it to around 1,200 words. Here is the story. The Clockwork Ritual of John Miller. John Miller checked the antique pocket watch tucked into his vest. It was precisely 8 p.m., the same hour every evening for a decade. The hour he poured himself a neat, amber glass of single malt and settled into the worn leather armchair before the fireplace in his living room. The ritual was unchangeable, a rigid anchor in a life he'd rebuilt from ash. 10 years of freedom. 10 years without looking over his shoulder. 10 years since he'd buried his wife, Annabelle, in a desolate, unmarked patch of earth just outside the town limits of West Haven. His suburban home on Willow Creek Lane looked deceptively gentle from the outside, a picture of quiet American prosperity. Inside, however, it was hollowed out, consumed by a silence that seemed to vibrate in the air. After Annabelle vanished, he'd sold their old house, the one with the ghosts, and bought this one, determined to start fresh. A new place, a new life, no lingering shades of the past, no guilt, no crushing memory of that night. He had told her he wanted a divorce. In the ensuing struggle, his hands had clamped around her throat until the light drained from her eyes. The case was officially closed a year later. A missing person, no leads. Detective Tom Brown, a tenacious cop from the West Haven Police Department, never stopped looking at him with suspicion, and the rare times they crossed paths in town, Brown's eyes followed him like a predator's. But no evidence ever surfaced. Annabelle's body was never found. John lived on. He drank. He built his software company. He became a revered figure in the community, a generous donor to local charities, a wealthy entrepreneur, a publicly admirable man. No one knew the truth of what happened in his first marriage. No one knew Annabelle was truly dead. The doorbell rang, sharp and sudden. John's eyes snapped open, a tremor of panic running through him. He wasn't expecting anyone. His friends were few, and none ever came uninvited. It must be a delivery, he rationalized. He set his glass on the side table and went to the front door, opening it without bothering with the peephole, his guard momentarily down. She stood there. Annabelle, his wife, the woman he had killed 10 years ago. John's blood rushed from his face. His legs turned weak. A roaring static filled his head, like a radio dial turned up too high. "Hi, John," she said, her voice the same low, melodic sound that had once driven him mad with desire and then terror. "What took you so long to answer?" She looked exactly as she had the night she died. Shoulder-length brown hair, startling green eyes, the tiny mole at the corner of her lip. There were a few subtle wrinkles now, a few strands of silver in her hair, but otherwise unchanged, as if she had simply been living somewhere else all this time. John's mouth went dry. He couldn't force a single word out. "Are you just going to leave me out here in the cold?" she teased, smiling. "It's freezing out here." She brushed past him, slid off her coat, and hung it neatly on the coat rack in the same precise spot where she used to hang it in their old house. "You've redecorated," she said casually, glancing around the living room. "I like it. The sofa looks much better against that wall." John leaned against the doorframe, frozen, staring. This is impossible. It had to be a hallucination, some cruel trick of his mind. "You can't be here," he whispered, his voice cracking. "Annabelle, you're dead. I buried you." Annabelle laughed. The same soft, sweet laugh he remembered. "John, what are you talking about? I went to the doctor today, remember? You dropped me off this morning." The scent hit him then. Dior, her signature perfume. The same one she always wore. His heart pounded. "No," he muttered. "You died. You can't be here. I wrapped you in a blanket. I had dug the grave." She stepped closer, placing her palm against his forehead, the way she used to when he was ill. Her skin was warm, living. "You're burning up," she said softly. "You must be sick. Sit down, and I'll make you some tea." She moved into the kitchen as if she knew every corner of the house. She pulled mugs from the exact cabinet they were in, filled the kettle, stirred the sugar into her cup in her precise way. 3 clockwise spoonfuls. Every movement was hers, down to the smallest detail. John felt a wave of nausea. He remembered everything from that night with a clarity that could not be denied. Her saying she would leave him, his hands tightening around her throat, the lifeless slump of her body, the frozen earth, the shallow grave. He remembered all. And yet, here she was alive, smiling, pouring his Earl Grey tea. For the next 3 days, she stayed. John would wake up, half convinced it was a dream, only to find Annabelle in the kitchen cooking breakfast, humming, as if 10 years had simply vanished. She asked about his day. She teased him about little things in the way she always had. She acted as if no fight, no murder, no grave had ever occurred. But John's terror wouldn't subside. He tested her, asking about details only the true Annabelle would know. She always answered perfectly. He studied her habits, how she tucked her hair behind her ear, the slight wrinkle at her nose when she laughed, the way she rinsed the dishes in the exact same sequence every time. Everything was the same, and yet his technology told a different story. When he tried to take her picture with his phone, she wouldn't appear. The images came out blurred, or worse, perfectly empty where she should have been. When he confronted her with the evidence, showing her the blurry photos, she looked at them with confusion. On her phone, the pictures appeared perfectly clear. Somehow, his phone was lying to him or to her. On the 4th night, the doorbell rang again. John's heart seized. It was Detective Brown. "Evening, Mr. Miller," the detective said, his voice laced with old suspicion. "Mind if I come in?" John's pulse hammered. "What do you want?" "Just to follow up," Brown said evenly, though both men knew he was lying. "We circle back on old cases from time to time." John stepped aside, letting him in, desperate not to appear rattled. When he turned back to the living room, Annabelle was gone. The movie they had been watching was still playing on the screen, but the sofa cushion was empty. "She was just here," John blurted out before he could stop himself. Brown's eyebrows rose. "She, my friend," John stammered. "Interesting," Brown said, his eyes narrowing. "You know, your wife's case is still technically open. Some new information has surfaced. People talking. Sometimes the truth just has a way of finding its way out." John's throat tightened. "What? What information?" Brown gave him a long, cold stare. "Bodies have a way of turning up, John. Eventually." The words settled like ice in John's chest. After the detective left, John pressed himself against the wall, trembling. He closed his eyes, trying to calm himself, only to hear her voice again. "Is he gone?" He opened his eyes. Annabelle stood on the staircase, looking down. "Where were you?" he demanded. "Upstairs," she said calmly. "I thought it better not to show myself. I don't want the police involved. Not after the way you've been acting." Her words cut deep. She looked so real, so alive, but something about her eyes was wrong. Behind them was a depth, a weight he couldn't comprehend. That night, John couldn't sleep. He lay next to her, listening to her steady breathing, trying to convince himself she was flesh and blood. But when he finally rose, unable to bear the torment, he opened a hidden folder on his computer. There, with old photographs of Annabelle, the real Annabelle, before she vanished, he compared them side by side with the woman upstairs. Every detail matched. Every mole, every line, every nuance. And yet, the doubt gnawed at him. What if he hadn't killed her after all? What if the memory was nothing but guilt twisting his mind into nightmares? But no, he remembered the body, the grave, the weight of the dirt covering her. He had to be sure one last time. He took a new photo of his computer screen displaying Annabelle's old picture, emailed it to himself, and shut the lid of his laptop. If the email arrived intact in the morning, he would know his memory was a lie. But when he opened it at breakfast, the image had warped into a gray, static-filled smudge. He stared at it in stupefaction. "Something wrong?" Annabelle asked, setting a plate of eggs before him, her smile soft and tender, her hand gently stroking his shoulder just as she always had. John swallowed hard, staring at her, knowing, for the first time, that whatever she was, real or not, she would never leave him. Not now, not ever. And for the first time in 10 years, John Miller was truly afraid.